Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana, Robyn, and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Today, we're really excited to be joined by Eric Lide, author of Dragonforged, Sword of the Champion. Hi, Eric.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank,
coming.
thank you for having me.
Real quick, just to start off, can you briefly tell our audience what Dragonforged Sword of the Champions is about?
It's my new debut graphic novel series. This is the first book, and it's about a young boy who discovers that he is the legendary champion, um, sort of like a reincarnation of a great hero, and he's sort of whisked on this adventure to face off against the evil fiend lord, who is the bad guy who has taken over the kingdom 100 years ago. And it's sort of like his destiny to go up against this great foe. But he himself is, Oren, the main character, he himself is very shy and doesn't know if he is quite worthy of this title. So as he goes on this journey, he has to sort of discover himself and find his confidence to accept the role that's been given to him.
When did the idea for this book come to your head, and what influences and inspirations did you pick up or incorporate as you were writing and illustrating Dragonforged?
I'm trying to remember now. It's been a while. It goes back quite a bit, but I think the pitch, I made the pitch during the lockdowns during the pandemic, because at that time I had nothing but time, so it was like I figured might as well do it, But the original, I wanted to make something that felt like the kind of, I grew up playing a lot of like video games, like RPG video games, like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and The Legend of Zelda, stuff like that. So when I was making this pitch, I wanted to make a book for kids that gave the same kind of feeling of the stuff I liked when I was growing up. Those I used to read a lot of like fantasy and play a lot of games like that, and that was sort of like my escape into the world when things were stressful. So I wanted to make a book that took all the stuff I liked from that stuff, and hopefully if there's any other kids out there like me, if they're they would the book would be fun for them in the way that something I would have liked to have when I was a kid, growing up.
Definitely.
Yeah, we can see your inspo like from different kind of like forms in the like graphic novel itself. And a lot of it I credited to like how a lot of your work has been in shorter form, like comics or in collaboration with other people's writings, but mostly from like a fantasy point of view. Did you find yourself approaching this series differently than you have for other projects? And was there anything that surprised you as you're working on this one yourself this time?
Yeah, this is my first graphic novel. Like normally I come from like sort of like more indie world, and I did a lot of like web comics, and I've done more serialized stuff where I kind of was able to just make it up as I go. Like long form stuff, drawing a few pages a week and airing them online, and sort of changing the story and adapting to as it goes into what fans respond to and things like that. So for this, the biggest difference for this story by far was that I had to come up with the entire book before I made it, before I actually started drawing it. So this was the first time I had to really like write the whole story and figure everything out. So that was very tough to transition from just sort of fooling around every week, just whatever comes to your mind while you're drawing, to like actually locking down a novel's worth of material. And I remember even like the first go at it I had, I drew way too many. I wrote way too many pages. Like I could quickly tell it wasn't going to fit into like the page count we had for the book. So I had to trim it down. Like a lot of that, like stuff like that, was tough to figure out. So it was a learning process, but it was good. It was really fun, and I took from that, from like for future books. I definitely learned a lot just working on this one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like I feel like I guess I wouldn't have thought about it that way, but also I know I hear a lot of authors talk about like if they're plotters or pantsers or like something like that, and it feels like it definitely having to have a everything together at once instead of like letting the story kind of take you where it does.
Mm.
And I'm sure like I mean I'm sure you're getting like feedback and stuff from like editors and stuff, but I'm sure that like lack of audience was also kind of a different kind of thing to navigate while you're in the process too.
Yeah, totally. That was another really big difference, is you're not getting that. I describe it as like kind of being on an island a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you get feedback from your editors and stuff, which is great, and that's a very big. That was also a very big difference from doing my own stuff independently. But yeah, one of the biggest difference is not getting that audience feedback for a long time. I mean, the book's not even out yet, so I still haven't
Right.
gotten the audience feedback. So that's a huge difference, and it's kind of like, I described it before as like being on an island a little bit, because you're working, but you're not really. If I do a webcomic and I put out a page, I get that immediate feedback. If I do this, I'm drawing 300 something pages, and I don't know what anyone thinks of it yet.
Right.
So, uh, so it is a very interesting, it is an interesting difference, because for me, I finished this book. It's coming out now, but I finished it last year. And, when I finish a work, usually it flies out of my head a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, even just talking about it or rereading it and stuff is a bit strange for me, because it's like, oh yeah, I made this, you know. Because it's already done. It's already done and dusted, and I'm on to the next thing. So
Right.
uh, so yeah, it's a different speed doing this kind of thing compared to what I'm used to. But it's an interesting change of pace, and it has its own challenges, and it's nice to do things a different way for the first time.
Yeah. Um so you also obviously you wrote and you illustrated the book. And all of the characters kind of have their own kind of distinct look. Um so I guess the question is like what was your process for developing their looks, and then how did that or did that inform their characterization?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think when I first designed Orin as the main character, and when I first designed him, I wanted a character that was a bit more passive, because usually when I draw comics for people who've been reading my stuff, my protagonists tend to be really like uh, active, I guess you'd say, like
Mhm.
proactive, like more outspoken, like crazier. So for this story, I wanted to have a character who was a bit more quiet, and so I started from that perspective, and then Margot, who is the sorceress who guides Orin on his journey, uh, I designed her specifically to be like the opposite of Orin. So I started from Orin, and then you invert him to get Margot. And I usually design characters in pairs. It's just like, I think it's just an easy way for my brain to work, because you have a character and then you make somebody else for that character to bounce off of. So usually when I
Mhm.
create a character, it's in doubles or triples, I usually say. um I'll design like 2 or 3 characters at the same time, and I try to make them all distinct from one another. So yeah, I each character I think like has their own utility in the story, and I just thought of as their personalities came out, their designs would change. Even in the pitch, like their designs changed quite a bit from when I first drew them.
That's super interesting, and I know like the fiends too. I feel like they have like there's different power levels and like I guess status within their like society, but they also have like vastly different appearances. So I
Mm.
was curious, who were some of your like favorites to draw?
That's a good one. Probably Salisbury, the dragon who appears towards
Mm,
the end. Just because he's so much bigger than everyone, so it was fun to try to make that work. Um, yeah, I wanted for the fiends in the story. There's four dread fiends that show up, and they're like the boss fights of the book. Because I always, when you play these fantasy games, there's always like a part where you have to fight like four bosses or something.
right.
So I wanted to put something like that in. Um, and yeah, I just tried to give each one a different look, just so like when you're reading the book, you get a different type of battle each time. Hopefully to keep things interesting. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'd say probably Salisbury was probably my favorite to draw.
I love Salisbury too because his personality and
Yeah, he's hilarious.
his design are so like I don't even know if it's his personality and his design, but it's like when you first see him and like he like he's like the older person that doesn't know how to work FaceTime type of like thing in that first scene, and then you see like his I'm gonna, beat you up and I'm this great fiend, and then you kind of get another side of him, and I thought that that was like really interesting considering like he's so much bigger, he's so like coming from the previous battle that they went through, thinking it was like gonna be one thing and you just kind of really flipped it on its head. I thought was really cool. Um this book like is centered around Orin and Margot the sorceress, and like Orin is kind of a reluctant hero. He when we meet him, like he does have aspirations and like he wants to be like a a village guard, and then he finds out that he is like the chosen one. And Margot has trained forever for this quest and like comes from kind of a place where everyone in her community is training and like thinking about this like greater quest. Um, what did you find most compelling about pairing these characters who occupy like different skills and confidence levels, but also different kind of expectations for themselves, um, and having them like work together to this larger goal?
I think it was tough because like I kind of just like I kind of just winged it, to be honest. Well, I mean, like as I would write, like different characters would their motivations would start to change. Like as like if you have a character say one thing, then I think about it a bit more, and I'm like, okay, so Margot, at first when I designed her, I knew she was going to be like the one to guide Orin on this quest, because I just thought it would be fun to have this sort of sassy character dragging and kind of like a meek character around. And but I didn't really think too much about like her side of it at first, and then as I began writing, I thought about it more, and I was like, oh, there's kind of a connection here between like they both have roles that they're kind of put upon, so I played around with some of that, and going forward into the series, I want to hopefully be able to show more of the lore keepers where Margot comes from. Uh, so yeah, it was like a discovery kind of thing. Like as I would write the first script, like then eventually I would get notes back and see some opportunities for where I could describe other things of characters, and then there was opportunities there, and then eventually I would toss in some dialogue that hinted towards other aspects of the world and stuff, like so. it was like it was just kind of like a discovery. Like things happen kind of naturally, really.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Like you're saying that you just kind of started writing and then just went where the characters took you. Um, it's interesting because before we see Oren and Margot head off on the hero's journey, we get to see and are introduced to Oren's support network of his family and friends, and like why he kind of has like the motivations to do what he wants to do. But on the journey itself, Margot says that he's going to need companions to assist him along the way, and the first person that he chooses is someone that not someone that Margot would really have in mind for that role. Um, how I mean, I feel like we're getting hints to like we might learn more about Margot's community experiences like further on in the series, as you mentioned. Um, but how do their community experiences kind of shape the differences in their expectations of like who should be on the journey with them and what they should be going for?
Um, I I think right from the start, I wanted to have uh, the third character who joins them, Chester. I wanted to have him. Like he was one of the ideas I had from the start, just because I love mimic chests, what they're called, like fake treasure chest monsters that show up in all kinds of stories like this or games and stuff. So I always knew I wanted to have a character like that on. That was like one of the first things on the board was just to do that. So once I got to that part, it was like I thought there was an opportunity to talk about the fact that he's a fiend and the other, so he should be like a bad guy to them. So that opened up a whole lot of future stuff too, where I was like, I could tell the story, um, where Chester is sort of dissatisfied with how the Fiend Lord operates. So maybe there's other fiends out there who are like that too, and maybe there's a chance to explore the fiend side of um, this conflict between that's going on in this fantasy world between these two groups of people. So Chester was a really fun addition because he opened up a lot for the sequel, which I'm writing now. Um, I forget what the question was now. I'm sorry. If that answered it.
I guess like the only like non like the thing you didn't hit was about like the differences in opinion between Oren and Margot about who should be on the journey with them, basically.
Oh yes, yes, yeah. I figured Margot would be opposed because she's a bit more like, I mean, like she's a bit more aware of the dangers of the world, whereas Oren, I think, could see the good in anybody, regardless. He's a bit more innocent in that manner. So I think going forward, I think the story will have a lot of moments, without spoiling too much. Even in this book, there's moments where Oren sees the good in something that Margot doesn't, or doesn't, or would prefer to take a more violent stance towards. So that's a source of humor, and also a source of, I think, where I'd like to take the story, where I think the reason why Oren was chosen for this role is because he can see the good in people. If not everybody necessarily is out to get them, so I tried to incorporate that into the story.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit about Oren and like kind of him being shy and like kind of lacking confidence. And in the story he goes from kind of like idolizing these legends and like hearing these stories from the past of these like great warriors, to suddenly like becoming one or like being one himself. Um what did you enjoy most about writing him kind of coming into that confidence, and then what was the most challenging?
The most challenging, I think, was probably the scenes where he's upset, because it's like I don't like drawing my characters cry. Like it's so it's kind of like to get to that point where he's like upset and stuff. I thought that was like that was hard. um, yeah, I just wanted to have, I don't know. I tried to include elements of, I think, what I would have liked to hear when I was a kid. Like I was a very shy. I'm still very shy. and like, but just kind of going for the thing you want to do for yourself, like believing in yourself is pretty tough. And that there wasn't like a lot of characters growing up that looked like me, when I was reading these kind of stories and stuff. So I think I was thinking, like, what would I have liked to see, what would have been good for me to hear, growing up as a kid, or what kind of character would I have liked to see that through. So when I was designing Oren, I was just thinking those type of things. But yeah, it was. I tried to make it so that he was like, a capable fighter and everything like that. He just needs to believe in himself. He already has everything he needs. He just needs to put it to practice, which is something that I frequently found myself dealing with growing up. So hopefully, it's something people can relate to when they read it.
I think one of my favorite things about Oren too is that, like, it feels like when he's not thinking about, like, when we first meet him and his friends are like trying to go after this, like, become knights, you don't really see his self-doubt, and just like he's like in the moment. But whenever he, like, the moment's over, he stops and he breathes, or like, especially once they proclaim him champion and he's seeing all of these like people looking at him with expectation, that's when like the self-doubt really starts to creep in, and like he's immediately like, oh, this is cool. Uh-oh, maybe they made a mistake. Maybe this is it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wanted to yeah, like that was something I tried to get across, where it's just him or his friends and he's fine. But when like, I wanted to show that he's perfectly capable of doing these things. He's just, yeah, like, it's just when he thinks about it too much, then the power's shut off, and he can't get it. He can't get it going.
Yeah. So the world of Drayland, where the story is set, is plagued with fiends, these monsters that terrorize humans on behalf of like the fiend lord. But you complicate the motivations of the fiends pretty early on. What made you want to write a story that explores like the nuance of good versus evil, and having characters who are questioning that, even if they're not using that language to question?
I think it was like, again, it just kind of, it happened organically, because originally when I first started, it was pretty just straight down the line, good versus evil. And then, like, for the Fiend Lord, for example, in the 100 years since he's conquered Drayland, he's kind of let himself go, and he's also become a father, and he's got this like teenage daughter, and immediately that humanized him to me as I was drawing him. Uh, and then you have Chester, for example, who's got a family, and he even talks about his own motivations. So like, I was opening up the idea of the fiend. There's more to some of these fiends than just being bad. Some of them are bad on purpose. Some of them are just monsters. I think it's going to be a bit diverse. Some of them are just pure evil. Some of them are just doing it for a paycheck, uh, or doing it because they've been told to do it. They don't know any other way. Um, so I tried to give a different experience of each part of the story, and going forward, it's something I want to explore a bit more. But it just happened kind of organically. Like, as I would write one character, then like the existence of another character would show up, and then that makes me think about other things, and then suddenly it's like, okay, well, the Fiend Lord has a daughter, and he has things he cares about. If he has things he cares about, then he's more of a person than a monster. That kind of thing.
Funny that you mentioned the Fiend Lord and his teenage daughter, Emily, who is, I mean, like many teenagers, a moody teenager. She has used her magic mirror to do what I guess he didn't expect her to do, which is to watch humans. Why is it important that we see her willingness to despite her father in a way that benefits humans within the story? Try not to spoil what actually happens, but yeah, why is it important that we see her do that?
I want to expand her role in the second book.
Mhm.
We'll see a lot more Emily in the next book, but basically, I like the idea of there being like a character on the inside who's sort of rooting for them, and I think she's like a contrarian. Like she likes the things that her dad hates. Like she like her dad hates humans, so she's like humans are cool. They're like rock and roll to her. Like they're fighting against the man and everything, and so she's a bit of she likes them as an underdog. Um, and also like there's a bit of a mystique to her because she's trapped in the castle and she can't actually meet them or anything. So I think she just thinks they're really neat, and hopefully in the next book we'll see her actually get to meet other characters and stuff, and how that affects her feelings towards her dad and feelings towards humans as well.
I definitely was going to try to slide in a reference to part of their world into this question because it felt like that's what Emily was kind of rolling with there. Like she kind of had an Ariel kind of vibe where she was just like she's looking at the humans, like isn't that neat? Like so it's
Yeah.
interesting.
I did think about it more of like because she's like I know it's a magic mirror, but she's kind of watching them like a reality show or like it's partially like entertainment, but then it's also kind of a parasocial relationship. It feels like she's building with the humans. Like I
Yes,
follow
yeah.
them and like I'm following their journey, like building their villages and like going to work. And so and then her dad has like a very flat, the fiend lord just has a very flat, like we're fiends, they're humans, like re-rule them, like they're the worst because they're not us type of thing. And because she's sitting trapped and not being able to go anywhere in this castle with no like companion besides her dad, she's like, well, actually I'm watching them, you know, build houses and work hard and they seem pretty, you know, like yeah, like an underdog, but like I'm rooting for them, they don't have magic, they're just like doing it all. um
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, like with Emily, and like I know that you're saying we're gonna hopefully see her more in the next book, but when you were coming up with the story, um, did you know it was gonna be a series, and did you think about like what those character growth points would be, and how much to kind of sprinkle in um for a character like Emily? Because I did get the feeling that we would see more of her and she would play a bigger role than she has just by the end of this book.
Yeah. So when I pitched the book, I pitched it as a trilogy. Um, my publisher bought two books, so it's been a bit of a thing because I try to make each book something where you get a complete story. If you read it, which I think if you read this book, you get a beginning, middle, and end. But yeah, I knew I was getting at least two books, so with that in mind, I left some stuff for like Emily open for the second one. Uh, but it's been a bit tough because I don't know if I'm going to get a third one. So I'm trying to write the second book as if it's once again like you get a conclusion, but also like ideally I'd like there to be three. We'll see. Um, but especially like I don't who knows what the future holds. But I knew at least I was getting two, so I did write with that in mind with stuff like Emily, where I knew like she would be getting more of a focus in the second book. Like I plotted out each like beat of their stories as I was writing and how I'd like everything to go. So fingers crossed, we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we get the full trilogy. I feel like this was such a good kind of entrance into this world, and I like the humor was all it was really fun, and
Yeah.
I felt like it was like when you were talking about your inspirations and like it's like it felt familiar, but at the same time like very different and like new in a way that was really cool.
That's good. Yeah, that's what I was going for. I really wanted to try to bring a type of energy to like this sort of middle grade graphic novel scene that like you don't see too often. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully kids like it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, I'm not middle grade, so I can't speak for the kids, but I think you did a great job as someone who like also don't know the RPG video game world as much, but I felt very like I could see this being like a game, like a, you know, Breath of the Wild type of like, you know, epic journey type of thing, but also all of these characters, the Chestertons, I thought like that whole thing just made me like super happy. And even though I didn't get the reference of like mimic chess, like I don't know what that is, but I was like, this is amazing. So I think you did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, I was hoping things would play even if you're not familiar. It's a hard balance to get. But again, I tried to just make something that if I was a kid and I saw it on the shelf, I would have grabbed it and fell in love with it. It's hard. It's for me, it's hard to even be objective about the book at this point because I've been working on it for so long that it's like just a bunch of nonsense to me. So when other people come up to me and tell me they enjoyed it, I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm so grateful because I have no clue at this point.
We definitely enjoyed it, so thank you.
Here on Wizard Team, it's no surprise that we love books. We also love supporting the independent bookstores.
With our bookshop affiliate link, you can not only get all the books on your TBR, but you can support indie bookstores and B&C at the same time.
And if you're not sure what you want, that ain't no problem. Check out our The Plot Thickens list full of recommendations from none other than Porshèa herself.
Head to www.bookshop.org/shop/blacknerdscreate to treat your shelves.
Treat your shelves.
Oh, that's nice. That's clever.
Oh my goodness.
That's clever.
Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
I feel like for me, like even as a kid, I was like you can sink me in by leaving a little bit of mystery on the table, and so like the characters I feel like are compelling enough where I'm interested in seeing where the story goes, but the mystery on the table of like, what is Margot's life like? She dropped some lines and I'm a little concerned about where she like, has she been held? Has she had a hug in her life before? What's happening with her? And then the same with like Emily. Like, is Emily going to be like good trouble, or is she just going to be like a contrarian the whole way through? So I feel like there's so many like parts that are still left on the table that I know that younger me would definitely be like, oh, there's got to be more books. Where's the next book? So hopefully that'll work out for you and all the aspirations for the next, getting it all out the way you want to get it out.
Yeah,
and I also think I feel like the characters are complex because there's like one moment pretty early on after we've met Margot where I'm like, wait, is she a bad person? Like, and even Orin is like, aren't we supposed to just be helping people? Like, and I'm like, what's going on? So I feel like they're complex too, but not all of them. So it's even the good guys are
that comes from my love of writing really mean characters. Like pretty much all the feedback I got on my script was that Margot was too mean, and I had to adjust it a lot.
Well, I think where you ended up, Margot's a perfect amount of like just real and mean, but also like she just doesn't have time to sugarcoat things.
Yeah, I mean that was like always. I just always love like character. I always love having a character who's like very reasonable, who bounces off of a character who's just completely ridiculous. And to me, like, the fun for Margot is just like everything revolves around her. Everything is just like in her head is just like, you know, some of the nonsense that comes out of her mouth, like, you know, it's just fun to have Oren and Chester just be like, what are you talking about? Like, you know, that's just like really fun for me. You know, some people, I think, when they read it, it could be off-putting for them. So hopefully, you know, I got the right level of craziness for Margot. But yeah, we'll get more from her, hopefully. And Emily, and maybe we'll see them grow into more measured, balanced, sincere people.
Or not. As long
Or
as,
not,
you know.
yeah. You never know. You know, you can go either way.
Right.
But yeah, I'm always attracted to writing like really selfish characters. So Margot was really fun for that reason. But I think her head is on the right. Like she's I forget the phrase, but she's got the right
spirit.
stuff in mind.
Yeah,
she's got the spirit. Yeah.
Her goals are, you know, she from a good place, even if the delivery is a little bit rough around the edges. But,
yes, exactly.
I did love that there's like one moment where she goes, oh wait, that was selfish. And it was like, so she, you know, self-awareness is there.
Yeah.
There.
Yes.
Growth, learning.
Yeah. Every once in a while, you know, yeah, it's like I've gone too far. Okay.
I just love that she, like, when you're saying that, like, having reasonable characters beside completely ridiculous ones, I love that in her head, she's so reasonable. And she's like, y'all are not catching you don't get what I'm saying? Like, am I not making common sense? Oh.
Yes, that's like my favorite. Characters who are completely confident in their insanity. It's like they're like, you know, she knows whatever comes to her mind is just that's what it is. And she's
Totally
100%
reasonable.
confident. Yeah.
Yeah, very confident that that's the way forward.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just fun to have that like balance off of Oren, who's a bit more like, you know, like what are you doing? Like why would you say that?
Right. I definitely felt like they kind of rubbed off on each other as time went on too, which was like cool. It was like they kind of like to the moment that Robyn was talking about where she was like, oh, maybe that's a little selfish. It was like I felt like they both kind of had those moments where like they heard each other before the other person said it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Or they're like, oh wait, okay, no, I'm on it now. You know what I mean? Or just like kind of shifting their perspective. I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, even Margot in her ridiculousness had moments of like, she was very supportive of Oren in a way that like, and I think he needed it to be a bit pushy in her support. Her support was it was a pushy type of support,
Yes.
but it was, you know, like she didn't let his like self-doubt really like change the way that she dealt with him, I guess. And so she was just kind of like, you're gonna need to catch up. Like we're going and you need to just
I didn't want to have her like bully him, you know, like I didn't want to have her be like, I never want to have her like punching down on him. It's just more like she's like a tornado coming through and he's got to hold on, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say she's like a train and she's like, get on board. And he's like, okay,
exactly.
I guess I'm getting on board.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the moment that like Robyn was talking about earlier about when Oren is initially like, should we do this? It's when they just got rid of those guys who came to town and who were like falsely claiming to be the like chosen one, and they were just like getting money off of it. And when like the next thing you see is her making sure that they get funds for their journey, and he's like, Oren's like, we just got rid of people who are doing that, why are we doing it? She's like, no, you're being ridiculous, we need money, like don't play with me. And I just thought that was like, I loved that was a conversation that was happening of like, you know, whenever something's being done for the wrong reasons and you can't just like have an overall approach to things because someone did one thing wrong, like, oh, I'm not going to touch any of that, like that's actually not working for us. We have to think of like, as long as we're actually being ethical behind what we're doing, I don't think there's any problem about doing what we need to do.
Yeah, and I love that like her response was basically like, no, they were lying, we're telling the truth, like we're actually doing what we
Well,
what we claim.
at the end of the day, you still need money to get around, you know. So
Exactly.
I wanted to have like, this is something I'm trying to get into book 2 a bit more, but I wanted to have a sense of keeping track of what the characters have on them. So this is something I didn't really get. This is something I didn't really get to be in book 1 as much as I wanted to. But originally, I wanted to have more shots of them like buying items and stuff, and like keeping track of actually how much gold they had. So that scene was kind of like a remnant of that, where they were counting how much they had left. But I actually wanted to have them like, there's only so many pages, you know, so I wanted to have them like doing odd jobs for money and stuff like that, but there wasn't enough time. But in the next book I want to hopefully get to have more sense of like how they balance their budget for like buying new items, new gear and stuff, because that'd be fun to show. Because like I always thought it was funny in those kind of games where a lot of the humor that I was when I was writing it was from things I would think about while playing, you know, these old games or reading these old stories and stuff. So like, for example, Emily came from the fact that I was like, well, what happens after the fiend or after the bad guys in these games when they take over the world? You know, what do they do after that? You know, so I was like, well, what if he had a kid? Like, so for things like with the money stuff, I thought it was funny because they send you on these grand adventures in these games, but they always start you off with zero money in your account. So you're just kicked out of the village and you have nothing. And you're like, okay, like, we're all depending on you to save the world, but like, we're not going to give you a dime.
You gotta make it on a road, kid.
Yeah.
Like as an semi-avid Pokemon player, that's what I was reminded of. Like whenever I saw when you noted that you wanted to put more in the book about like where they were with their supplies and stuff, I noticed in the panels when they lost a bag, and I'm like, oh crap! Like, are there supplies? Like, how are they gonna get their supplies again? And I feel like that was like a continuity behind it. Like, the bag got lost. Like, I didn't see that bag again. Like, they had to get a new bag later. So I really enjoyed seeing that and picking up on that. And it reminded me of playing Pokemon and being like, you get hit by a trainer and you and you weren't ready, and now all your level 5 Pokemon are like fainted and you have no money. Like, that's where you are.
Yeah, you lost your cash.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I tried to even Pokemon, that was another one growing up. Like, those are a lot of those RPGs were formative to me, so I tried to include those feelings of being like lost in a cave and you have no items or anything, and you're like, what are we gonna do? We don't have the map, we don't have anything anymore, you know. So hopefully in the next one I wanted to try to incorporate stuff like them getting more gear and stuff and getting stronger as the story goes. But also there was like I'm trying to think of other gamey stuff that I popped in because of that. But that was definitely like one of the larger ones, was trying to keep track of what they had on them and stuff. So when they lose the bag, I tried to make sure like, you know, the bag's gone, so they don't have the book anymore. You know, they can't consult it or anything like that. So that's something I'm trying to keep track of in the next one as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's a fun addition to it that definitely makes it feel. Yeah, I feel like it captured that for sure. So I'm excited to see what the next installment does with that, or how it continues.
Yeah, I'm currently writing it now, so it's going good. I'm currently in the process of realizing I've probably written too much and now have to to edit it down. Yeah, so which is always the heartbreaking part, because you have to choose which of the precious, you know, moments that you don't want to lose gets cut out.
Right.
But that's writing. And I try to keep anything on the cutting room floor. I try to save it. You know, you never know when you can use it.
Yeah.
Anywhere else.
The special B-roll behind the scenes extra panels.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us, Eric. And please let our listeners know where they can find you and your work.
I have, my website is ericlide.com. I'm on various social media platforms, or I was. I think I deleted a few of them now, so I actually have to check. Instagram is Eric M. Lide, and I am on Blue Sky as Eric Lide, and I am on Tumblr as Eric Lide. I post a lot of comics on the internet. I draw a webcomic called OzzyTheVampire.com. It's not for children, so if you're a younger than 18, I don't read it. If you are a child, check out Dragonforged. I'm trying to think about everything else, but yeah, those are pretty much the main places that I post stuff. I try to post comics all over so I don't disappear into the algorithm. But it's getting harder and harder to keep up these days.
Yeah.
It's always a fight against the algorithms, right?
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, that was part of the reason why I wanted to switch over more towards traditional publishing, was I was just getting sick of like what the internet has been turning into. So, but yeah, those are the places you can find me. I'm most active these days on Blue Sky and Tumblr, but not really much of an online person. Recently I've been trying to focus more on the real world. It's getting a little scary online these days. So,
oh man,
you gotta protect your neck. But
yeah.
Everyone, you heard him. Please follow Eric where Eric is available to be followed. But also, thank you all for listening to this episode, and join us again on Wednesday for our next episode of Wizard Team, where we'll be continuing our read of Amari and the Despicable Wonders by B.B. Alston.
Wizard Team is part of the Black Nerds Create Collective. If you want to keep up with our content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com. And follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Wizard Team Pod and at Black Nerds Create.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.